Luke 18:27 says, but he said, what is impossible with man is possible with God.
Amen. Nothing is impossible when you have God. Which is why he wanted evidence that the interpretation comes from the gods and not from human standpoint, by requiring the gods to reveal the dream to his interpreters. Verse 6 says, but if you tell me what I dreamed and what the dream means, I will give you many wonderful gifts and honors. Just tell me the dream and what it means. Basically, if you are who you say you are, you should know what I dreamed and know what it means. And if you tell me, I will give you rewards, gifts and honors. So who can tell me what they think gifts and honors are? Anybody? A guess? Matt?
Probably wealth, status, different kinds of riches.
Yeah, so what I have is treasures, riches, titles. Usually a lot of people were addressed by their titles. They weren't just addressed by their name. They were addressed by, Maddie, prince of this, or ruler of this, or like, for example, chief of staff. These are their titles. And with more titles or higher titles, you are considered more royal. And even positions and even properties. They're given land even to as rewards. Verse 7 through 8. They said again, please, your majesty, tell us the dream and we will tell you what it means. The king replied, I know what you're doing. You're stalling for time because you know that I'm serious. Remember, these are the wise men of Babylon. They're smart and educated men. And for their predictions, for this type of request, it's hard for them to just make something up. They might need a little something to get it started, but because right now all their lives are on the line, the king, of course, is suspicious right now by their lack of response, and he thinks that they're buying time. And the New King James and the ASV version says, bargaining for time, stalling, hoping he'll forget. Either tell me or you all die, he says. Verse 9 continues, you know that I am serious when I say, if you don't tell me the dream, you are doomed. So you have conspired to tell me lies, hoping I will change my mind. But tell me the dream, and then I'll know you can tell me what it means. As it says in verse 9, there is only one penalty. It says that in the NIV version. There is only one decree. Also in the ASV version. Who knows what decree means? Does anybody know what a decree is? Chris?
A law.
A law, that's what it is. And the penalty under law is death. If they can't say the dream, the king believes there might be a conspiracy against him and his throne. A king who is as ruthless as he was, it would be wise to do what he asks. This is him demanding proof of his men that they are assisted through his gods, the gods of his land and the gods of his people. In Isaiah 41, 22 through 23, let them try to tell us what happened long ago, so that way we may consider the evidence, or tell us what the future holds, so we can know what's going to happen. Yes, tell us what will occur in the days ahead. We will know you are gods. In fact, do anything, good or bad. Do something that will amaze or frighten us. Now that particular verse in Isaiah was written approximately 80 years before this part in Daniel, when Israel was divided into two kingdoms, the north and south. The south being Judah and the north being Israel. We talked about this in my first Bible study. In Daniel, the land of Judah was where Daniel was captured, remember? Isaiah 41, 22 through 23. The northern kingdom was Israel. They sinned very bad against God, and Judah was headed in the same direction, which ended up carrying out, as we all know. And by that I mean, we know and we heard that in the land of Judah, before Daniel was captured, there was a lot of paganry going on. There was a lot of false idols going on at the time before he was captured. And we talked about King Josiah. King Josiah was a righteous king. He brought back all of God's law, all of God's rituals, and everybody lived godly in that time of when King Josiah was in reign. But when his grandson and his grandsons all took over, they completely destroyed the temple again and brought back all the paganry worshiping again. And we know that his grandson ended up being King Jehoiakim. King Jehoiakim was the king during the time that Daniel was captured. So that's what I meant by the south. Judah was headed in the same direction as Israel was, as they were sinning against God. They were perverting justice. They were oppressing the poor. And the one we all know from my study was turning from God to idols. Isaiah was a prophet in Judah, but he gave warning to Israel in the north. Israel was surrounded by many different nations whose God supposedly had special powers. Does that sound familiar? The people relied on these gods to help crops grow or even bring victory in war and etc. But of course, they failed to deliver. You guys might want to write this part down. A God with limited or no power at all is not really a God. A God with limited or no power at all is not really a God. We know God is completely trustworthy. He's a promise keeper. And when you start to put trust in money, career, military, etc., will any of it come through in the end? Does this have a perfect plan for your future? To conclude verse 9, I have Jeremiah 10, 5 through 6, and Psalms 115, 5 through 8. Jeremiah 10, 5 through 6.
What verse was it?
This is to conclude verse 9. And Psalms 115, 5 through 8. And this is referring to false idols and false gods.
Jeremiah 10.
5 through 6. Verse 5. Their gods are like helpless scarecrows in a cucumber field. They cannot speak. And they need to be carried because they cannot walk. Do not be afraid of such gods, for they can neither harm you nor do you any good.
Excuse me. Can I get that last address? I'm sorry.
Psalms 115, 5 through 8. And verse 6, Jeremiah 10, Lord, there is no one like you, for you are great and your name is full of power. He calls them scarecrows. And why do you think he uses scarecrows to describe false idols? Does anybody know? Or anybody can guess? Patrick?
They're scare people. They can't do anything to them. Stand still.
Close, but you're pretty much. The answer to that question is pretty much in Psalms 115, 5 through 8. Verse 5 through 8 says, they have mouths but cannot speak, and eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, and noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, and feet but cannot walk, and throats but cannot make a sound. And those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. He uses scarecrows to let them know that they're just there. They don't do nothing. They have mouths, they have bodies, they have a form, but they are nothing. And you shouldn't fear them. They're false. Verse 10. Verse 10 says, the astrologers replied to the king, no one on earth can tell the king his dream. And no king, however great and powerful, has ever asked such a thing of any magician, enchanter, or astrologer. No one on earth. The king wasn't looking for someone on earth to tell him his dream. I mean, he was looking for someone on earth, but he was looking for someone on earth to have communication with the gods, to have the source not from earth. He wants the answer to come from gods, his many different gods. He wants to believe the answer came not from man, which is why he's making an almost impossible request to ensure it is from godly source. No king has ever asked such a thing, because it's not something any man can answer. It has to be from man who can communicate with gods. These Chaldeans, or wise men, if you will, have been getting by easily with simple requests. In my opinion, they have requests that say, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does the alignment of the stars mean? What do you see in the smoke or the fire? And these are all things that the king has to put complete trust in these wise men. The king can ask, what do you see in the smoke? And the wise men can say, oh, I see victory in the smoke. I see victory in this battle. Well, the king has no choice. He can't confirm, he can't deny. So these are requests that he's used to giving that they can answer. And it's very easy to make up stories. It's even worse when these people could even believe the lies that they're giving. Magicians, astrologers, enchanters, sorcerers, the devil himself, they're not good fortune tellers, which is why he cannot perform through this black magic and give answers to this ridiculous request, which is why Nebuchadnezzar is angry, believing these men were the real deal for a long time. And they're starting to appear like a bunch of rip-off artists. That's why he says, this is the last straw. You've been kicking it here in my palace, and my courts are far too long. And if you don't come through now, you're all going to get cut up. As Robert would say, straight up. Verse 11.